Good evening, good night, and welcome to the real world. Erev Yantif, Klal Yisrael sustained a loss. I personally sustained a loss of a good friend. It seems like a strange thing to call a good friend to somebody who was in their mid or even high 90s. But anybody who was zeicher to know Mr. Benny Fishoff understands that he was a good friend to every single person he met. It's not to be masped on Yantif. I don't intend to be masped. Just a few words of acknowledgement to somebody who was very dear. The Baal Tanya says, the Gemara in the first paragraph of Sukkah discusses the hechsher. So we know that a Sukkah is kosher with two walls. The shlish is the third wall, afilu tefach. And the Gemara is discussing the structure, the makeup, the logistics of that kind of Sukkah. And the Gemara talks about a tefach being expanded, the tefach being able to replace a full wall, because it's just a little more than a tefach. And the Gemara calls it a tefach seichik, an expanded tefach. The way the Gemara refers to it is a tefach seichik. Now the word tefach seichik means a laughing tefach. Why is a larger tefach, which is a generous tefach, which is an expanded tefach, why is it called a tefach seichik, which means a laughing tefach? The Baal Tanya explains that when a person's besimcha, when a person's happy, they're expanded, then their largesse flows as well. When a person's in a good mood, you never see a Baal Simcha, somebody at their daughter's chasna dancing and thinking, hey, that person took doubles. Why is that person taking another drink from the bar? Do they know how much I'm paying? Because they're besimcha. When a person's besimcha, the goodness flows in every single way. A person who's essentially a happy person wants it to be good for everybody else. Like the Baal Tanya, tefach seichik, an expanded tefach, expansion is connected to simcha, and that's why the Gemara uses that term of a laughing tefach. Mr. Ben Fishoff, was a happy person. He was a person who lost everything. He lost his parents, he lost his siblings, he came out alone as a teenager. It seems inconceivable. His parents sent him off to go to find refuge for the whole family. By the time he got there, they were already gone, and he came to went to Shanghai, and he ended up coming to America by himself, and he built a beautiful life. His wife and his children, his incredible children, exceptional divers. And he became a very happy person, a very generous person, a very good person, a person of nobility, of aristocracy, of dignity, in so many ways. And the 3 minutes here doesn't allow to talk just something he told me. I had the opportunity to sit with him a lot. Whenever really I was able, I would sit with him and listen to him share the chayinus of his life. And he told me that at a time, Rabbi Yisroel, with whom he was so close, asked him a Gudar should start a commission on making shalom in families. There was a lot of inter-family machlaikas, yerushas, other things, and they felt that a lot of the things could be solved with correct mediation. So the heads of that committee were Rabbi Shmuel Kamenetsky Shlita and Mr. Fishoff, Zachayin Lebracha. You can imagine walking into a room with either Mr. Fishoff or your brother L'chaim, the Philadelphia Rosh Yeshiva itself can solve half the problems in this world. You see their smiles, you see their faces, and you're ready. Things are a little better. Mr. Fishoff had that effect on people. So he told me about the first thing that ever came where he knew both of the litigants. It was two people, both were survivors, and Mr. Fishoff, who was a survivor, was able to say, you know how it was for survivors. They grew up having to fight for every piece of bread, so it was hard to shed those habits. A man who had so easily shed those habits and become so generous and so selfless was able to analyze and understand that not everybody was as blessed as he was. So he said they were both survivors, and it was a difficult thing, and the whole fight was about a few $100s. One was a landlord, one was the tenant, and the tenant needed a paint job, to which he was entitled. The landlord said he's not paying for the paint job because the reason that the paint was peeling in the house was because of the tenant line of work. Whatever the tenant was doing in that house had caused the paint to go bad, so he wasn't paying for it, and the tenant said he's entitled to a paint job. He's not being mevater. They went back and forth, and rather than pay for court, well, go to the Torah, they went to Mr. Fishoff. So Mr. Fishoff told me he was able to solve it very quickly. He didn't even need Shmuel Kamenetsky. He didn't need any help. I said, how did you solve it if they were both such difficult people? He said, I took $500 out of my pocket and I paid for the paint job. That's how I solved it. That's the mixture of simcha and shalom, the generosity, not in money, generosity of spirit, the ability to say, I want things to be good for everybody, the goodness that flows from somebody who is content. And because he saw the bracha in his own life, he was able to rise to a place where he didn't walk around with carrying the pall of destruction, even though he felt it so deeply. He told me that every single night when he went to sleep, he closed his eyes, I heard this from him, and he visualized all his siblings, Hashem Yom Kandamam, who had been killed. He was the oldest, and all his younger siblings, he was the oldest boy. I think he had an older sister, and he said his little brother, who he barely even got to know, he was only 2 years old when the war broke out and he was killed, he barely got to know and to enjoy them, and he would visualize them every night. He had a lot of pain in him. You didn't see it. You only saw goodness and simcha and generosity and kindness. He once told me that he was a bit about stock. He was very generous, well beyond his means, and anybody who called really was helped. He said at a certain point, the people would call up and say, last year Mr. Fishoff gave me $1,000 or $2,000 or whatever it was, and the secretary had a list of all the meisters. I'm calling for Meister X, for Meister Y, this is what I got last year, and the check would go out. So Mr. Fishoff told me it's very convenient, and it's very efficient. I'm able to have more hours in my day to work, because they call the secretary and she sends out the check. But I lost something. It's so efficient, but I lost the human contact. I liked hearing from them. I liked hearing what they were doing. I liked to encourage them. I like to know, what are you doing in your yeshiva, in your school, in your kollel, in your chesed organization. Tell me what you're doing and let me feel a part of it. He says, now everything is so formal and everything is so neat and easy, but we lost the heart. He was a happy person, and so he was a person who was not only expansive, he was able to expand the lives of others. Sukkot is Zman Simchaseinu. We know from the Svarim, a footnote famously brings out that the Gaon, who was the father of Torah, the pillar of Torah Shabbat Pavas Nifta, Zman Simchaseinu, and the Baal Shem Tov, who's the father, we would think the father of Simcha, of Chasidus, was Nifta on Shavuos, Man Matan Tereseinu. Tells you something about their essence. Mr. Fishoff left us on the eve of Zman Simchaseinu because he was a person of Simcha, and that's really his legacy. May his Yizachar Baruch.